Welcome to the Homestead Farm at Chippewa Nature Center in Midland, Michigan. This farm is set up like a farm that would have been found in Midland County in the late 1800s. We're going to take a tour to learn more about what life would have been like for a family who lived on a farm similar to this one. Farm families built many different buildings on their farms. Each building had a specific job. The cabin was the family's home. It was made of wood, and the beams were often made of the trees that were cut down to make room for fields. This cabin has one large room with a bed, a dresser, a table, a desk, and a stove. This would be where the family would read books, knit or sew clothes, tell stories, and spend time together. It was also the parents' bedroom. Often the children would share a room upstairs in the cabin. A stove in the middle of the room kept the cabin warm in the wintertime, and glass windows that could open would cool it off in the summer. There was no electricity, so the farm family used oil lamps to light the room when it was dark. This cabin has a separate room for the kitchen. They would cook and bake their food on the stove in the kitchen and eat at the table here. Water for cooking and cleaning would get pumped from the well on the farm and carried to the kitchen in buckets. There is no bathroom in the cabin. Instead, the family used an outhouse located behind the cabin and pitcher and bowl to wash their hands and faces. Farm families in the 1870s spent a lot of time outside of their cabin working in the barn, taking care of animals, tending the garden, or working in the fields. The barn was also made entirely of wood and usually held the food for the animals, tools for buildings and repairing things, and animals lived in the barn during cold or stormy weather. Farmers made trips to town to purchase tools, shingles, fabric, and other things. However, they often repaired tools and built things themselves when they were able to. A farm family would have had a garden where they grew food for their own family. They may have grown things like squash, potatoes, tomatoes, carrots, beans, peas, onions, and more. They grew enough of these foods to last them through the winter. The family would have stored a lot of the food they grew in the root cellar. This underground room kept potatoes, carrots, and onions cool and provided shelf space to store cans of beans, peas, applesauce, jam, and other foods. In the fields, farmers grew corn, wheat, and other crops. The family that lived on this land grew fields and fields of strawberries. These crops would have been harvested and taken to town to sell to families who did not live on a farm and could not grow their own food. The family would have taken these crops to town in a horse-drawn wagon. In addition to growing vegetables, fruits, and grains, most farm families also kept animals. Sheep provided wool, milk, and meat. Chickens laid eggs and provided meat, while cattle provided a lot of meat and the cows provided milk. Pigs were good at cleaning up leftover food and provided meat like ham and bacon. Farm families might have used all of this food for themselves, or they may have sold some of it to families who lived in town. Farm families also kept horses or oxen to pull their wagons, plows, and sleds. Farmers built many sheds and shelters to keep their farm animals safe and comfortable. Farm families in the late 1800s were able to build their own homes, barns, and sheds with the help of friends and family members. They were also able to grow or raise most of their own food. They were an important part of the local community and bought and sold many items in nearby towns. Near the end of winter, when daytime temperatures rise above freezing, magical things start happening in the maple forest. It's the time of year when we can turn tree sap into a delicious treat called maple syrup. And it's not really magic, it's science. Last summer, when the days were warm and the trees were green, the leaves were busy making sugar so the tree could grow. They use a process called photosynthesis to combine the energy from the sun, carbon dioxide from the air, and water they absorb from the soil to make sugar. This sugar is moved around the tree in sap. When fall comes, the tree sends its extra sugar down its trunk and into its roots, where it is stored for the winter. Come spring, the tree needs that sap to help sprout new leaves. In late winter, when daytime temperatures reach above freezing, the tree begins moving that sap from its roots up to its branches. If there is a broken branch or a hole in the tree trunk, the sap will leak out as it moves up the tree. That's where we come in. So a tricky thing with maple syruping is that we tap trees when there are no leaves on the tree. And so how do we identify a maple tree? There are 3 B's that we use to identify maple trees. Their bark is gray and shaggy. which other trees do have. Another thing though that maple trees have that a lot of other trees don't have are their branching. And so they have opposite branching, where on a twig, their branches, their little twigs come directly opposite each other. So that is one identifying feature, because only ash trees and dogwoods really have that too. So we know the bark, the branching are opposite. And then the last thing for the young trees is we look at their buds. And so these are brown, small and brown. Other maples like red maples and silver maples, their buds are a little bit more reddish, but our sugar maples, which have the highest sugar content, are brown. So we have a maple tree here. Before we put a bucket on it though, we have to see if it's big enough. And so we use our tree calipers, which measure the diameter of the tree to make sure it's big enough. And so when we hold it up here, it says it's 2 taps, which means we can have 2 buckets. So we have 1 bucket already, so we're gonna put another bucket on this tree. The first step we need to do is to drill a hole. And so I got a spot lined up here. When we drill our holes, we actually can't go above or below an old tap scar. We have to go kind of in between. And so we're gonna hold it that way. And then you wanna come on up and help drill? There we go. That's pretty much all the way in. Just gotta take it out. Okay, step back, kiddo. Step back. There we go. We got our hole. Oh, and there's some sap dripping out. Look at that. There we go. You good? So now we gotta put the thing that's gonna direct our sap into our buckets, our spile. And spiles are made of different things over time. Right now, a lot of people use plastic. This is a metal one that we're gonna use, and so we're gonna tap it in. So you two are gonna help me. All right, so you step back and then, yep, we'll do one at a time. And if you can step back just a little bit that way, there you go. Yeah, I think you're actually good. What's falling out? What is that?
Sap.
It's sap, isn't it? And so that's what we use to make our maple syrup. So what's next though?
The bucket.
Yeah, we gotta hang the bucket to collect our sap. And so, if you come on over here, buddy, come on over here. So we're gonna hang it right there. And then where does this go? And top. And so we put the bucket on. We joke that the deer don't take a drink because sometimes they will drink out of here. But the main thing is we want to keep the snow out, which is actually snowing right now. Snow and rain. We don't want more water going in our sap because that takes longer for it to cook. So that's the process. Once the sap is collected, it's time to start boiling it to concentrate the sugars. The sap is moved to a large collection bin and then flows down a pipe into a special pan called an evaporator. Well, welcome to the sugar house. This is where the magic happens and where we turn pure maple sap into pure maple syrup. And so what we got going on here is our evaporator is heated by a fire underneath. And so Phil, our volunteer here, is constantly maintaining this, putting firewood in, and you can see that the sap is boiling on top. There's steam, so the water is leaving, and so the sugars stay in the pan. Over time, those sugars concentrate, and so that's basically all it is to making maple syrup from the sap, is cooking it down to get rid of the water. This has different compartments in it at different levels. So the two over here are at about the same stage, and he is always constantly scooping over to our finishing side. This is the side that will be pure maple syrup. When the maple sap has officially turned to syrup, it's time to stop cooking it. We know it is ready because the temperature will be 219 degrees Fahrenheit, and the hydrometer, which measures how thick it is, will float at just the right line. When the syrup is ready, we draw it off, which means we remove it from the evaporator. We open a valve and the syrup flows out of the pan and into a filter canister. The filter removes any impurities from the syrup, including niter, also known as sugar sand, which is made of minerals that were in the sap. From the filter canister, the sap can be transferred to jugs, jars, and bottles to be canned and stored on a shelf until it's time to be put on our pancakes. Each spring, we collect the sugary sap that maple trees made last summer and concentrate it down to make delicious maple syrup. As soon as the buds on the trees begin to open, the maple syrup season is over, and we wait until next year to enjoy the magic of maple syrup.
Wetlands are unique ecosystems that provide important ecological services to the natural world and to people. A wetland is a place where water covers the land for all or part of the year. The soil is hydric, which means it's saturated with water. It is also anaerobic, meaning it lacks oxygen. Wetlands have plants that are adapted to grow in saturated soil. The wetland we're going to explore is a marsh. It has water year-round and has soft-stemmed plants like cattails, rushes, and lily pads growing in it. Marshes are nutrient-rich environments with the minerals, nutrients, light, and water needed for many plants to thrive. Submerged plants like pondweed, bladderwort, and coontail live entirely underwater. Plants like water lilies and duckweed have floating leaves. Emergent plants like cattails, rushes, and arrowhead have their roots in the soil below the water, their stems emerging out of the water, and their leaves and flowers above the water. Some plants live along the shoreline of marshes, including shrubs like willows and dogwoods. All of these plants provide food and shelter for a wide variety of animals. Beneath the water of a marsh, fish and aquatic insects thrive. The marsh is also the perfect place for animals that spend time both in the water and on land. Turtles, frogs, ducks, and geese all find what they need to thrive in the marsh. Many birds, such as herons, swallows, and blackbirds, hunt and raise their young around marshes. Muskrats, beaver, and river otter also make their homes in the banks of the marsh. Many other animals stop by for a drink of water or to find food. Marshes are important for people, too. Their soil acts like a sponge, so when there's heavy rain or snowmelt, the marsh can absorb the additional water, preventing or reducing flooding in nearby areas. They also filter the water that moves through them, collecting and holding excess nutrients and pollutants. The water that leaves a wetland is cleaner than the water that enters it. Wetlands can also help replenish the groundwater supply by holding water and allowing it to seep into the ground rather than run off into a river, ditch, or drain. Sometimes wetlands are seen as a problem because you can't farm, build homes, or construct businesses on them. The wetland featured in today's video was created in 1991 to replace the one that was destroyed by the construction of the Midland Mall. Because it is several miles away from the original wetland, it doesn't prevent flooding in that location, but it does provide food and refuge for wildlife. It also provides a great place for people to connect to nature and learn more about our amazing marshes.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And make sure to click that bell icon to stay notified when we upload new content. Videos like this are only possible because of viewers like you. To help support this channel, click on the link in the description below. We'll see you next time.